Well, let me start with the reason why we do what we do, or if you wish, the problem we tackle, the problem we intend to solve, the software problem we intend to solve. The past 2 decades, software asset has becoming pretty complex and more complex and more difficult to grasp and to understand and to control and to change and so on. Specifically, the custom software asset, those big software applications that support business critical processes. In that context, what we do for a living, what we provide is what we call software intelligence, which is technical information about what's inside the software, internals, such as is the software ready for cloud? Is the software green, more or less green? We'll come back to that later. What's the legal risk exposures in terms of copyright and things like this? What's the technical debt, which is a big phenomenon today? All sorts of technical questions you may ask. Software executives may ask about the software, their software that support the business. That's what we do for a living. It's not specifically actually in 2024, but this has started with the Gen AI, big trend, where suddenly, and that's a personal opinion, the world started to think that AI could do everything, could replace the human being, if you wish, transforming, modernizing the complex software systems. And we actually worked with subject matter expert in AI in the past 2 years on this very topic. And the reality is that AI is super powerful, but AI need to be fed. AI need to be trained. The same way that if you ask ChatGPT today any kind of questions about who is the Indian Prime Minister, AI didn't know that. AI had to be trained. And the same way it applied to software internals as well. AI need to be taught, need to be trained, And actually the software intelligence technology, which is this technology that analyzes software and tells you everything you need to know about the software, can be positioning as a way, can be positioned as a way to train AI, so that in return, AI becomes smart about the software you are dealing with and can help to tackle the complexity you were referring to. Make sense? In India specifically, so yeah, that's a good one. Actually, that's the reason why I love this country. It's because of this culture. It's nothing to do with business, and the people actually, but also as a CEO and Chief Technologist Officer, if you wish, of this company. I do love this country because it's actually very, very, very big. And I'm talking about our own targets. I know that in the US, for example, there are 4.5 million developers, actually 4.5 million software engineers. I don't know if you know how many are they in India, but it's about 5. So actually, from my point of view, as a business guy, India market is much bigger than the US market. We're supposed to be the biggest on the planet. But for what we sell, software intelligence, we look after the custom software application. Indian market is pretty big. You have pretty big corporations, Indian corporations, but also like telecom, banks, and so on, but also what you call the GCC, the giant software engineering center, and also an emerging fintech, many emerging fintech companies, which are super interesting because they are building complex software, and this is where we can help the most. And so it's a very, very, we've been in India for many years, 6, 7, 8 years in that range, maybe a little bit more. And we have been growing year on year, but when we look at the coming 3, 4, 5 years, it should be for us a very, very interesting period. The open source software, a given custom built application, being developed by internal resources and so on, for supporting key business processes. Typically, that's an average. 1/3 of that, up to 1/3 of that could be open source, right? And there are good open source and not so good open source. There are highly unsecure open source and highly secure open source. There are legally okay open source and there are not legally okay open source. As a CIO, SVP application development, head of global engineering, software engineering, how do you know what kind of open source, good or bad, is being used? You know, you have no. So there are plenty of tools for developers that track those bad and good open source tools. But if the developers, you may have hundreds of thousands of developers, if those developers bypass, if you wish, those tools or do not play the game, you know, you never know what the developer could introduce into the code that could expose you and that could increase your legal and security exposure. So what software intelligence technology does at the top of all those tools for developers is that to give the top management, by analyzing the software asset, what's inside the software, including those very specific open source risks. So the open source could be, my point of view on this, it's a great source of productivity because it's about reusing something that does exist, right? But you need to reuse the right stuff. And if you ask any CIO in India, big banks, big telco, and so on, what's inside your software asset? They don't know. They would tell you, well, my developers have good tools. Yeah, but you know, developers are developers. They are not accountable for the security and efficiency and legally IP, intellectual property of your software asset. So it's all about to give executive visibility into the software internals. Well, again, there is most of the players, and we must be the only one, but most of the players in this space, which is a very important space, because very dangerous, but also very promising, you know. I mean, very helpful, but also dangerous. And most of the players in that space are equipping, are selling, if you wish, tools to developers so that developers those tools can tell developers, don't use this, or use this, and don't use this, you know, these kind of things. It is not that I don't trust developer, but you cannot ask a developer to deliver by the end of the week something very urgent for the business, and at the same time to be highly respectful, you know, about all the quality criteria, including the open source one. So what I believe in is what we believe at CAST very much, is that we need to empower the management. Because as a matter of fact, if you have the top management in IT, to what extent can you see inside your giant custom software asset? Well, I mean, you know, software is by definition, the DNA of software is by definition pretty obscure, very complex, and so on. It's a technical matter, if you wish. So we analyze those technical assets, and we turn this into KPI and analytics and insights that any business guy, CIOs, even CEOs, CFOs can read and understand. It's all about to give the knowledge, information about the software asset to the top management of the company, so that you give the best possible tool to the developers, and you give a mean to control the use of those open source to avoid the dangerous one to the management, and you have the best of both worlds. No, that's a general same idea. You know, when you have to manage a legacy system or even an application that has been developed 5 years ago, which is not legacy. I mean, well, everything is legacy. The day after it has been built, it's legacy. But usually when you say legacy, it's old, you know, but not necessarily. It could be an application that has been developed 2 or 3 years ago with 10, 15, 20% turnover, you know, people resigning on a yearly basis and so on, with lots of people moving from one project to another project to another project. The preservation of knowledge, the preservation, the expertise, the technical expertise of how the application has been built is very difficult to keep in-house, right? And for modernizing a system, whether old one, legacy one, or the more recent one, it's like any complex piece of engineering. You need to know it very, very well. Here, I'm not talking about the CIO anymore. I'm talking about what I call the practitioner, the software architects and software engineers. They need to master the complexity of those things, right? But a big, complex software systems is by many order of magnitude far more complex than an airplane or a space engineering type of, high tech. It's one of the most complicated technical pieces on Earth. And so, just for one man, I mean, again, those professionals we need to modernize and change the systems the same way they need information about those systems, technical information, how those systems have been built, like a blueprint, if you wish, or the exact same, you would not modify a big building like this one without a blueprint, right? A software system is 20 times more complicated than a big building, right? And what software intelligence provides in that context is blueprint, internal, how the application has been made on the application inner workings. So that helps. The typical example is what's going on if I modify this little piece. What would be the consequences of a change? What we call impact analysis, which is a big problem in software development, because they don't know actually. They change something, they send the system to the test, the QA tests it doesn't work anymore, it goes back to the development, they test it, they change it again, and back and forth, and it's very costly on an unmatched way of doing things. Make sense? Well, actually, that's a very good question. For transforming or modernizing, for transforming a big complex systems, well, there is the end customers, the CIO, who own the systems, and he typically can't do it alone. So he needs a system integrators. The Infosys, Wipro, Tech Mahindra, LTI, and so on. And actually, those big guys are our best friends from a business and technical standpoint. Why is that? Because what we sell is a technology. It's like an MRI for software, right? What we sell is a technology that allows to see inside the software automatically. But we do not modernize the system. Someone needs to take care, to use those outputs and to modernize the system. And to make it very clear, I'm going to use a basic analogy. At the hospital, right, you have the patient, right, which is the end customer. You have the MRI. You go through the MRI to scan your brain or whatever you want to fix or to improve. And you have the surgeon, right? And the SIs, the Infosys, LTI, and so on, are the surgeons. We are the one who sells the big MRI machine that provides the scan to tell you what's inside the body. And the patient is a customer. And it's a very good association. In addition to that, there is a cloud service provider, which is where the application is going to go eventually if you want to move it to the cloud. Problem is that for moving a big system to the cloud, you need to modify it, to transform it, to change it. And back again, when you want to change something very complex, you'd better to have a blueprint, you'd better to have a MRI output, that tells you what's going to happen if you want to change this or that. It's about, electronic documentation, if you wish, of the internals of any complex software systems. So cloud service provider who are actually helping us to market our product because it is in their best interest, in that sense of if it takes 1 year to send a complex system to the cloud because you have to modify it and so on, with CAS it's going to take 6 months. So now put yourself in the shoes of AWS, Microsoft Azure, or Google Cloud Platform. For them, the shorter the better. It's a question of time to market. For the end customer, the shorter the better. So that's a very good win-win association between end customers, CIOs, cloud, what we call CSP, cloud service providers, on CAS, the machine that helped to accelerate the move to cloud. It's a good one too. To transform, if you wish, or to modernize, transform a big complex system, it could be again a billing system, a telecommunication operator, or core banking platform of XYZ big bank, whatever. It may take 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. It's a very heavy surgery, actually, very complex and technical tasks. Until recently, everything was doing by hand, manual, not automated. What we can automate on our side is the production of technical information that you need to modernize and change the system rapidly and safely. But we do not automate the modernization itself. We automate the production of technical information. You need to change something, right? Like an MRI at the hospital. And then if you use software intelligence technology or technology to feed, train, the proper terminology is to ground AI, ground like grounding something, to give ground to something. But if you use in general audience, it's better to use feed. If you use our software intelligence or MRI for software to feed AI, LLM, AI engine, well, you use our software intelligence technology to analyze the custom system. Then we become very knowledgeable about, the software intelligence technology becomes very knowledgeable about the systems. With this knowledge, we feed the AI, and with this, thanks to this training, the AI, then you can ask, hey, AI, can you do the job for me, right? That is marketing. Meaning that, can you do the job for me? It doesn't mean the AI is going to do 100% of the job, There is a little bit of dream here. But if, thanks to a combination of software intelligence and AI, we can automate 20% of the work, well, put yourself in the CIO shoes. He has a transformation. I heard this morning, a big bank in India has a $400 million modernization transformation program. Well, if by combining software intelligence and AI, they can automate 20% of the workload, well, that's $80 million saving, right? So, but you may read in the press here and there, because there is lots of marketing, blah, blah, about AI, would tend to exaggerate a little bit what AI can do. And on my side, I want to be just more cautious. I think that it's terrific technology to automate 5, 10, 20%, sometimes 30% of the work being done by hand, at least for between now and the coming 3-4 years, which is already enormous, But I read in some newspapers that AI can automate 90% of the job and replace, well, Infosys is not going to lay off 90% of their employees anytime soon. You see what I mean? And they will have more work to do, and so on and so on. So these are fantastic things to increase the productivity and automate part of the job to some extent. Does that make sense? Well, the world needs to go green, for an obvious reason, at least for our kids. Because, and specifically in India, actually, where it's pretty hot, I noticed that, right? It's going to become very, very hot in the coming 2 or 3 decades, right? So we have to do it, right? But the economy and the business world is such that if we could add at this, have to do it, some very specific financial incentive, we would do it even faster, right? And the good news is that with software intelligence technology, such as CAS, we analyze our application portfolio, and we can tell you what you need to, we can tell technical practitioners what they need to do in the code to make the software greener. What does that mean? To make the software more efficient, which means to make sure that the software is going to consume less CPU and resources and energy, if you wish. It's like energy at home, like a washing machine with not sure you have this in India, I don't know, but in Europe, in the US, you have the red, orange, green, electronic machine, more or less consumption optimized, if you wish, optimized for consumption. in the same, that's the exact same idea, but for software. So we analyze the software, and we tell you how to make a red or orange software into a green software, okay? That's what we have to do to save the planet for the coming, it's about 2 to 3% of the CO2 emissions, the software data centers. So it's less than air transportation or less than cars and so on, and oils, and, but it's 3%, it's still big. The good reason for doing it now, right away, I mean, economically speaking, and not waiting for the coming 20 years, is when if you pay a bill of $50 million per year to a cloud service provider, okay? It's proportional to the consumption of your system. If you reduce the consumption by 5%, well, you are going to reduce the bill by 5%, right? The more your software is efficient, the less you will pay next year to the cloud service provider. So if you don't do it for the planet for the coming 20 years, well, do it for your invoice coming from Azure, AWS, or Google next year, you know. But if it's like, you know, when driving a car, if you build cars which are going to consume less gas, well, you are going to pollute less, but you are also going to save money, right? That's the exact same things. And I had a discussion at the very high level, CEO -1 at cloud service provider, saying, you know, aren't you not afraid, but what about reducing the consumption? Because it's about reducing the amount of your invoice. And they said, we are all for it, Vincent. For the planet, for sure. But also, the more we become cost optimized, the more we become cost competitive, the more our customers will give you new systems to the cloud. So for them, the planet is, economically speaking, the different stakeholders are very well aligned. You know, they are, you know, for the cloud vendor, okay, he's going to reduce a little bit his invoice by 5% and 10%. If me, the customer, I improve my efficiency by 10%, but I am going to give him more, you know, and that's what they want. So it's again, green. If I may give an advice, I would do it. I would tell all CIOs in India, do it for your kids first, and then do it for your CFO. You know, he will like you, that's for sure. Makes sense? We have something, so GCC market specifically in India, it's a huge opportunity for us because it's an area where we could deliver tons of value. Why? Because in some specific GCC, you have hundreds, sometimes thousands of applications, custom-built applications. And the head of the GCC, the CEO or global head of engineering of the GCC, like the CIO or CTO, actually, he has lots of information about the business processes, the cost, you know, human resources aspect of the game, and so on, you know. But they actually have little insight about the software asset, right? Because it's very complex, very obscure. And so they do have insight, but it is what I call bottom-up insight, meaning this is coming from application owners or project leaders and so on, you know. The professional accountable for those applications, but they don't have fact-based insight. In that context, we can deliver at very low cost everything they need to know about their software assets. So first, number one, in terms of value proposition, that helps them to drive, to steer the behavior they want. If they want to improve the green software, you know, you could put the focus on green. If they want to make their software asset more ready for cloud, they can put the focus on cloud, because we deliver those KPI, cloud, green, open source, and technical debt. If they want to eradicate technical debt, they can focus on technical debt using our platform, you know, our software intelligence platform. But there is something more. I was talking to a couple of CIOs in the US and in France, and they both said the same in big insurance company. Do you have GCC in India? Yeah, we do, yeah. 3,000 people, 7,000 people, you know, big stuff. And so what do you think? Well, it's cost effective. Okay, but what about the quality of services, you know? Well, you know, difficult because we don't know exactly what's going on, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Well, every single head of GCC in India, should report to the mother company, if you wish, whether in the US or in France or in Europe, wherever, and to report about the health of the software asset. Well, you need to know it. You need to have an automated way to have meaningful insight information about the state, the evolving state of the software asset, so that you can prove your mother company, the one who finances you, that you are making progress in XYZ areas. So it's both a technology, software intelligence is both technology that help you to improve your business and to report back to the CEO or board level on strategic initiatives such as technical data eradication, such as cloud migration, such as making your software asset more greener, and so on and so on. Right? Makes sense? Right. So then I don't know if I can pass a message to all the head of GCC, but they should look at this very seriously, because this is, we have a dozen of customers in that context. This is gold mine, and it is not expensive, and that's gold mine, and it's immediate value. We do not want to wait for 3 years to get the value. Gold mine in terms of communication between them and their team, and between them, the top management of those GCC, and their mother company, whatever you want to, the HSBC, SocGen, and so on, so on, so on.
Right. Thank you for taking the time out and speaking to BW.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.